Alrighty, so order at 7:04. Could you please read the territory resolutions?
Brock University acknowledges the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you so much. All right, so approval of the agenda. So be it resolved that the board approves the agenda for meeting number 10. Motion by Hinkle, seconded by Charlie. All in favor? Any abstentions? And any opposed? Okay, that would be everybody. That passes, and then our minute approval from last meeting. Be it resolved, board approves the minutes from meeting number 9. Can I get a mover? Thomas, seconded by Irene. All in favor? And that's everybody. Awesome. Okay, so our first thing on the agenda for presentations is the club funding update. Are they coming here to present, or?
Well, we was gonna zoom in.
Okay.
And Jamie as well.
Okay.
Oh, that's right.
All right. Did everyone get a chance to read over the update? It was in Boardable. Okay.
She said she was gonna just join at 7 anyway. No. Jamie had.
Jamie said he's gonna join online. I spoke to him 30 minutes ago.
He's hoping for me. He was going to be like setting up the event.
Is Chloe here? We're just waiting on Jamie, or are we waiting for both of them?
Both of them.
Both of them. Okay.
To be fair, I said it would probably be like 7:10 because we had to get through like the
Yeah.
procedural stuff.
They usually take longer.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because I'm probably gonna ask this eventually, is it possible that we could get the club being pulled up, like just some of the financial information, like kind of on deck? Because I'm
Hold up,
yeah.
like in terms of how much is
Like
left.
in terms of how much is left and how much is planned. Planned for 2025.
I think, oh, how much is planned for
2025.
Okay.
That's when really like
Okay.
So you want to know how much is left for this year and how much we have in total?
like I remember from the last meeting, they
Okay.
gave us the update of how much is left. I think it's around the ballpark of like $22,000, probably a lot less now because of the club ratification, but
Mhm.
I would like to see what we have proposed for the.
So it, in terms of what's proposed, it's just, like whatever the club's fee is times whatever the enrollment is, like that's where the club's funding comes from. So we can certainly just look up what it was last year and estimate maybe like a 2% or
Like
1%
inflationary
increase.
okay.
Yeah,
Cause that's what I've been.
Because we won't have those numbers confirmed until when? Like, when do we have that actually confirmed?
well, we know what the fee will be. We've sent that to Brock,
With
but
numbers,
until,
units.
yeah. Which we don't,
That's what I mean. I just don't know when they actually confirm the number.
yeah, it comes in 3 draws.
Redress.
So by September, we get one amount, January another, and then sometime in April, they reconcile the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chloe's here.
but Chloe would be able to she would be able to speak to like what the budget they were working with this year was, so we can. We can know roughly what to expect for next, for next year,
Sorry to interrupt, but like, yeah, I looked up that information.
for sure. So Chloe, they were just asking me what the total club's budget is. Like what it
Yearly?
was this year, and then based on that, what we expect it to be next year, which is probably very similar, plus an inflationary increase. I just don't know that number.
Yeah, so it's $143,000 per year. That's what I've been working on with from last year, this year, and going into next year. Just to note though, Kaylee and I pulled 50 grand from the surplus for club funding this year, and we'll be doing the same for next year.
I will.
Will be.
Perfect.
Will be.
That was just a question Thomas had before we got started. He wanted to know the overall size of the budget.
Yeah, $143,000.
Plus
$50,000.
Yeah.
And then plus the 50,000, yeah, but that's only for this year and next year.
It's unrelated, but I was just gonna ask,
Okay.
in like 10 minutes, I have to go pray. Okay, I just leave it.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay, do we want to get started without Jamie or?
Yeah, I think
You wanna
Chloe's
wait?
gonna hold it down largely and Jamie's gonna pop in and out, right?
setting up.
Yeah, Jamie's just working an event in Union Station, so I'm sure he'll hop on shortly, but him and I worked on this document together and I'm kind of just gonna run through it. And then hopefully he's here for any questions that you folks have. If not, I can just answer them.
Okay, perfect. Whenever you're ready then, Jamie.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you everyone for having me. It's appreciated. Just to kind of give everyone a little bit of background, I've been in this role since February of 2023. So I've been at BUSU as the club's manager for just a little over 2 years. So on average, since I've started, the number of clubs has been increasing by 15% each academic year. And by academic year, I mean September to April. And obviously with clubs increasing, that means more club funding is being requested for and approved, whether that be by the club's advisory committee or Jamie. In the 2023-2024 academic year, it was just me as the club's manager. There was no like Jamie's position. So there were 60 clubs that requested and received club funding, and it averaged about $2,438.54 per club, and that's what was distributed on average. And as some folks are aware, club funding did run out on November 16th, 2023. So then coming into the 2024-2025 academic year, 91 clubs requested and received club funding. And that was averaging about $2,300 per club, which is obviously a 40% increase in club funding approvals from last academic year, which is great. Excluding the 5 clubs that received over $10,000 in club funding, the remaining 86 clubs received an average of $1,315. As you folks know, without the additional funds from the closed club account that was discussed a few board meetings ago of $27,000 roughly, club funding would have run out by November 1st, 2024. So you can kind of start seeing a theme here where we clearly are starting to run out of money by November. As you can see from the graph below, it shows that 5 clubs, and only 5 clubs, receive 48% of the funding, leaving the remaining 52% for the 88 clubs who requested for funding this academic year. If you would like to know who those 5 clubs are, that's the Muslim Students Association, Model United Nations, Pakistani Students Association, Black Students Association, and the Indian Students Association. So those were the 5 that received over $10,000 in club funding. In September, the funding guidelines, which is in policy 501, were implemented, which truly have been a great resource for Jamie, obviously the club's administrator, and the club's advisory committee as a whole. The funding guidelines have truly streamlined the process, increased fairness, and maximized the impact of club funding. On top of this, we've seen a significant increase in the number of clubs organizing fundraisers, which we also love because we truly try to encourage clubs to think of club funding as a supplemental grant and to not solely rely on it as the existence of the club. So like I said, fundraisings increased throughout this academic year, which is great. There's actually been a few clubs who have even told me that they didn't even need to request for funding this year because they were so successful with their fundraisers. And some of those examples are like selling donuts, like Krispy Kreme. There's cookies, there's popcorn fundraisers. I'm sure you've kind of seen the posters all throughout campus. A lot of clubs are getting really creative with how to raise money. So obviously, Jamie and I started noticing that we're obviously running out of funding in the November time. So we feel that introducing a maximum funding limit of $5,000 per club for each academic year will be very beneficial. It will guarantee that all clubs have an equal chance to receive funding, including those that ratify in the fall semester, because bear in mind that there is roughly the last 2 weeks of October and the first week of November is ratification in the fall. And we typically have anywhere from 15 to 25 clubs ratify. And obviously it's nice when they ratify for there to be funding left over for them to use for the rest of the academic year. So we believe that the funding limit in conjunction with the funding guidelines that we already have will ensure every club has equal access to financial resources, promoting fairness, and an opportunity for all members to participate, grow, and succeed within their club. This structure aims to eliminate the disparity and foster an inclusive environment where clubs can thrive regardless of size or previous funding history. And Jamie and I did a bunch of research. I also network with quite a few folks in my positions at other student unions or students associations. So to put it into perspective, Guelph only gives out $1,000 per academic year per club. Carleton only does $2,700 per academic year. Toronto Metropolitan University is around $5,000 per academic year. And McMaster's only $800 per academic year if you're a returning club. If you're a brand new club, you don't get anything until you return that next academic year. So we're still we're in line with Toronto Metropolitan University, but we're still well above the average that a lot of other student unions are. So I truly think introducing this funding limit will just give more clubs chance to access funding and promote better fairness for everybody.
Thank you so much. Open it up for questions. Do you have a question, Robert?
Point of information.
Yeah.
Okay. So next year, the board approved an inflationary increase to the club levy of CPI, and CPI is 2.39%. If we take that number of approximately $150,000 from us, like it was 147 or something or other.
Are we including the 50,000?
No, because that has no inflationary measure to it.
Right.
There would be an increase of approximately $3,500 next year. So just for information purposes, so it would go from, let's say, 150 to 153.5.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you, Chloe, for the presentation. So just I guess a question of clarification. Does this mean that each club that applies for $5,000 will essentially be guaranteed $5,000, or?
No, they'll still have to go through the process of if they request for $3,000 or less, Jamie will review and approve part of it where he sees fit and if that funding fits the mandate. And then same, if it's above $3,000, the club's advisory committee will review it up to a maximum of 5,000. So it's not saying that every club will receive 5,000. It's just the maximum you can possibly get is 5,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So is there any chance for like clubs, if they wanted to get more than 5,000, is there any way for them to do that, or no, it's just set, like that's it?
It's just set.
That's when I think that would be on the club to fundraise. and come up
Fundraise.
More than the fund, or more than the
That
5,000.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll go Hinkle and then Thomas. So to follow up with this question, I think you mentioned 90 clubs, or let's round it, let's round it to 100. If we say 5,000 per club, that's 50.
100 probably 500.
My question is,
I actually been just crunching some numbers, but I think next year, if we're expecting like a 15 club increase, and we take the total which you've given us, which is $146,000, $575, plus the $50,000 of surplus expenses, divide by, I added like 15 or so clubs. That would give us a number, I think, of $1,872 per club next year.
If they all took equal.
If they all,
Yeah.
if they all,
Yeah.
like,
which they won't.
and
possible.
I also, sorry, I already
I'm good. Hinkle, go ahead.
I also think like I love the idea of equality, like I love what you guys are doing, and I think that all clubs should have equality. That being said, like, have we considered maybe proportional funding? Like, because I don't think necessarily we should apply the same limits to these big clubs like MSA, like MUN, like the Indian Student Association, compared to like, you know, a club with maybe only 15 to 30 people. And I understand it's for fairness and it's for sake of like introducing new clubs and it's for the sake of funding. It's just to say that these clubs have been long established. They bring a lot to Brock, they bring a lot to the student experience. And I don't think that they should be unfairly discriminated against through the funding policy.
So you're suggesting possibly like a tiered
Well,
structure?
I'm not necessarily even saying like tier structure, even honestly, even on a per membership structure, you could say we're going to allocate this amount of money per membership or like a tiered structure. I just don't think the $5,000, and no offense to you guys, like I absolutely love what you're going for. I think club equality is great and I would like to see clubs prosper at Brock. It's just to say, I don't think just saying like a flat $5,000 limit is necessarily the right way to apply things. I think it should be like, here's what you can apply for, and then more on like a case for case basis, then you could ask for more. So like depending on the amount of students, you could say this is the max you can apply for, this is the max you can apply for, this is the max you can apply for. And then if you want to go for additional expenses, I think we could still take that on a case by case. So obviously, I understand like you guys are more in tune with club policy. If you guys genuinely believe this expense, have we considered maybe like a proportional system for?
I've considered it. There's a few hiccups that I notice right away. One is you talk about membership. They can tell me they have 600 members in their club, and that's what's on Experience BU and that's what's on the roster, but really only 100 people show up to the club events, to the club meetings. So that's the one. It's hard to put it into a category of, okay, if you have this many members, you get this much money, but you're applying to say you say you have 600 members, but only 100 consistently come. So that's one that I thought of. The other one is every single club is going to want to be the exception and to be that case where we're different, or we see it all the time with a lot of clubs. They always think they're the exception to the rule or the exception to the policy. And we really try to treat clubs fairly. And also to put into perspective, Model UN, they received, like I said, over $10,000, but only 30 students benefit from that money. So it just gets a little tricky, and I've thought about tiered funding. It's just hard to put in those parameters, and it's hard to track okay, how many members actually will benefit from this money versus what you're actually saying?
You have a follow-up,
Yeah,
Tom?
I just like to have maybe even one clarification here, but when you say like the 30 members that get sent to New York for the Model UN chip at Model UN, you also have to think like, that's representing Rock at the highest stage of like international policy and debate. So I think like I'm not saying like I'm all for fairness and I'm all for equality, but you also have to factor in what the club is actually bringing to Brock and to the student experience. Because I think, in my opinion, and I'm not saying we shouldn't strive for equality and we shouldn't strive for clubs to be more equal. I'm just saying that I do think that there are some investments in certain clubs that are better served necessarily than maybe some others. Like I think like an event like that, or maybe like an event that is like a cultural celebration might have a little bit more merit than like, maybe just a simple like meet and greet or like a welcome to club night sort of thing. So I think that just should be a little bit more qualifiably considered in the the funding process.
No, I agree. And again, I'm not discrediting what Model UN does, that they do great work. It's just in the grand scheme of how many undergraduate students we have, how many folks are involved in clubs, it's just such a small portion that gets such a big piece of the pie. And again, we're not trying to like discriminate against these clubs. It's just we're seeing such a rapid growth, and going to referendum, I don't think should be an option. I think what we have, we should work within. We found this was probably the simplest way to do things. Again, I'm open if folks have suggestions, or I'm open to hear that. It's just from my experience and networking with other folks, other student unions, it seems that a cap is the most effective.
I have a quick question, Chloe.
Yep.
Do you know for those clubs that did receive over $10,000, like how much did they fundraise in comparison to how much they got from clubs? Do you have that number?
I don't. I can tell you that the Black Students Association and Model UN are the only two clubs that fundraised. The Muslim Students Association, the Pakistani Students Association, and the Indian Students Association didn't do any fundraising, but they did charge a ticket price for events.
Oh, thank you. Hang on. I had a similar question to yours. So the three that you listed that don't fundraise and have tickets, most like I can't speak on two, but I know like the Students Association when they sell tickets, it's more like it's a cultural event, but it's more like a fun event in a way, like the value or something. So do they make profit off of that? Like, and if they do, is it is it a big amount that they can use towards like the next year?
Sorry, I just had trouble hearing. Did you just ask if they do charge a ticket price, if they do make a profit, and if that goes into next year? Sorry, was that a yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so typically I find the clubs only charge a ticket price that covers the expenses of that event. I never really see the profit being carried over for next year. But that being said, for example, Jamie can speak more to it because he tracks the reconciliation and the receipts every single month. I just kind of pop in when he needs me to look at stuff. But the Muslim Student Association only did 50% of the events they said they were going to do at the start of the year. So they'll be carrying over quite a bit of money for next year. Not in profit, in club funding.
I want to know how was it calculated, or like what was like the reasoning for it to be capped at $5,000 when an average, and this is from your document too, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like the 86 clubs received an average of like 1,300, but you want to cap it at 5,000. Can you just walk me through why the 5,000 was chosen?
Yeah, so pretty much because we have that benchmark of $3,000, I didn't see it, for lack of a better word, worth the time of the club's advisory committee to come in if it was anything between $3,000 and $4,000. Because Jamie can approve anything that's $3,000 or less. Like I have a feeling they get frustrated if they came in just saying, well, it's only an extra $500. Like, why are we all meeting all the time? So kind of just to make it worthwhile for everyone's time and kind of taking into consideration inflation, as well as those clubs who get bigger and better every single year and want to put on more lavish events. Jamie and I figured roughly about 5K was worth it.
Just as a follow-up, would we expect to see a higher like surplus in clubs funding then? I know that's kind of
Like leftover funding?
like leftover funding, or would
No, like we
okay.
try to go through it, and we do if we don't run out every year.
So they've been running out in November
November.
every year. So now if there was a cap, then it would allow them to hear requests in December, January, February, and March.
And for those,
Again, I'm assuming, I don't want to speak for Chloe, but I think the idea is that if we found with a $5,000 cap, there was a surplus after a few years, then we need to reevaluate that cap again. So we're kind of just, no, I don't want to say guessing at this point, but we're trying to be fair in terms of if they used to receiving over 10, we're not taking them back to like $1,300 or $1,800, but we're also not making it so high that we're running out of funding by November. I think that's sort of what you guys
Correct.
are for.
yeah.
Irene, go ahead.
So does the 5,000 include the funds that were carried over to the next year?
No,
Okay.
like, for example, like let's say Winter Club carries over funds from this year to next year. That's not including that 5,000.
So then totally a club could have more than 5,000 in funds.
If it's carried over.
If it's
carried over.
carry,
Okay.
yeah, they just can only apply each academic year for up to 5,000.
Comments.
Yeah, I would kind of, again, just challenge and propose maybe more of a proportional system, like depending on the club size. And I think that that actually would be fair and respect the interests of people. I also think maybe making a maximum depending on the club size might be a smart way to go proportionally. And then maybe making that size smaller and then having room for additional funding for like maybe larger events or for certain social events. In a way that would kind of incentivize fundraising and incentivize maybe clubs to save money and not spend money, because I feel like there could be under our current system a lot of just kind of, well, quite frankly, frivolous club spending. And I think maybe attempting to incentivize saving and incentivize cutting costs where possible might be more effective than a salary cap. Or a strict 5,000, sorry, maybe not a salary cap. I think a salary cap proportionally would be reasonable, but just a strict $5,000 salary cap.
Robert would like to add something.
I'm gonna put you guys on the spot, I'm sorry, but do you guys have actually the spreadsheet of club funding in front of you?
I can pull it up.
Do
But
you?
can we put it up here?
And why I'm asking is, it would be good to have for the purposes of the board's discussion, what are those top 5 funding amounts? So you mentioned Model UN is about $10,000. What are the other ones? Just so to inform our discussion. Oh, looks like she may be looking at a spreadsheet perhaps.
If someone has it, you can just pop it in the chat.
Worst case scenario, I think I can grab it from one of our past.
I can download it if you want and put in the chat.
Okay.
I'm looking at it right now, so.
Yeah, then Patty can pull it up.
I just think it helps inform the discussion.
Yeah. I remember we did discuss the club funding. Right?
We did, yeah.
So I'm trying to go back and find anything.
I think Irene or Patty has it up now, I think. And I think she's now gonna maybe share the screen perhaps. I would just want desktop.
Yeah.
Go.
Don't you even.
I clear up difficult. Here to go right now, there's probably, I'm sure, 3 things.
You got her. It's like IT 101. Use the server.
Yep, got it. Thanks, Chloe. I'll just
And Michelle,
share it right now.
you're triggering anxiety in me right now. You especially looked at her over your file.
Chloe, is it this one?
Oh, I can't see anything. It's the
Oh,
one I
sorry.
just sent in the chat.
Let me just double check.
Yeah, the chairs.
Oh, is it this one or the other?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to highlight the ones that we see that are over 10,000?
That would be actually very good, I think. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also, if anybody wants to, I think I.
Okay.
If we scroll down.
Yeah.
Should stop there. There's one that's 14,000. One that's 24.
Yeah.
I think I saw one up.
If you go close to the top,
17, yeah.
17.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this one. And then we have to go back down.
there's 20,000 highlighted in pink.
Oh, yeah, there's one in pink right there. So that one's yellow.
And there's gotta be one more.
16
There we go,
16,000.
perfect.
There.
Okay.
One club got 9,000, which is just under the 10,000. Travel. We actually, is it okay? Can we highlight all the ones as well that got over 5,000?
Maybe in a different color.
Yeah,
perhaps.
different colors.
Will it let you sort? Just sort by column D.
Oh, that's so much smarter.
I'll
Must
be
have been that Tim that you ate.
be holding it in the Excel class later.
Everything above 5 and 10,000.
Yeah.
I'd have to say.
We're gonna say, even if you just sort it by highest
Yeah,
to lowest,
sort it
but she's getting even fancier.
The rating system.
Where'd she come up with those
I
skills?
think the hot, yeah.
Oh, this.
Yeah.
I think it's sorted already. Lowest times.
Oh.
Andy.
Cool.
You were a good hire.
Tell the friend.
It's unreal. I'm done now.
Okay.
Alright, so you wanted this?
So I
Go
can
ahead.
just elaborate a little bit. So Tomas, like in terms of, I think what the concept is there a way of redistributing some of the higher funding so that everyone gets access? So whether it's $5,000 or whether it's $10,000 or whether it's $7,500 or whether it's some other system, that's kind of the concept at this point in time, or not, because the board could say, no, we want to go status quo, and that is an option for you. The chair's going to direct that, so.
She, Irene's good to go. I'd like to respond to Robert.
Pardon?
Mine's like a completely
Completely different? Okay, go ahead,
And
Thomas.
so I absolutely understand that, and like, I'm not saying I'm like against the $5,000 cap or the salary cap. I'm just saying that these clubs that I see listed here are integral student clubs that are a lot of the heart and soul and identity of Brock students. They represent Brock incredibly well, and they're a big part of the student experience. And it's just to say that, yes, I do understand, and I do understand that we could be more equitable in our distribution. We should strive to be more equitable in our distribution. I think maybe a $5,000, just saying a $5,000 cap is just pretty limiting. I wouldn't be opposed to measures. I just think that those measures should be more proportional and more actually respecting of the various clubs' needs. I think a blanket $5,000 isn't necessarily the greatest way to go. And then also there will be clubs that might very well require over that $5,000 mark to maintain their current status within Brock. And I think that if those clubs can prove on a case-by-case basis, if they require more money, I don't necessarily think it's wrong for student identity-based clubs or very, very important clubs that are integral to Brock to necessarily get paid less than.
Another thing I would like to propose is like, instead of creating a cap for maximum funding can be, I mean, minimum. funding. Can we, is it possible to look into creating a cap for like clubs that are new? So that they get some amount of funding, and then if it's a returning club, we can see based on what the traction was, the year before, and then get funding based off of that. Because I know some of the clubs, like, that are new, they don't need 5,000 because they probably don't have enough members. And they probably like, yeah, they're probably just starting out and seeing like how they perform and then do it like a performance base. Because all the new clubs that are starting, like, that are ratified, they don't need $3,000 to start.
But then they wouldn't ask for 3,000.
Yeah,
We're
they
not
never
saying they
ask.
need to take the 5,000. You know what I mean?
Because like I was just going off of like McMaster, how they don't give funding to the club that's starting. Like I was just going off of that.
Oh,
Because I'm like looking at all the models that based on the research Chloe did. And how they don't give funding unless the club's returning.
I don't think that's what you're proposing, are you?
No. It was just an example.
Is that like an option?
Look into not funding them in the first.
Not like not funding them, but like capping on their funding. Like
Less
not
than
giving them like
5,000.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
That's what I meant.
I'm just gonna
sorry.
redirect the conversation, like this is, like, I like that everyone's giving their opinions, but this is more an opportunity to ask Chloe questions, and then we can discuss afterwards. So does anyone have any questions for Chloe? You have a question?
I'm just curious, like, just based on your experience with like new and returning clubs, like on average, how much would you say a new club is requesting when they are ratified? Like just in general. I understand like on a case by case basis it could be different, but just like the general gist of like a new club.
Like $1,000.
Okay, thank you.
Just looking at these ones that are over 10,000 or 5,000, how many of these actually use up the whole amount that they've requested? Because I know you said Muslim Students Association have done less than 50% of their events, so I'm assuming they haven't used up all their funding. So how many actually do use it up?
Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong. Based on what I'm seeing, like Model UN, obviously the money is used. Jamie, Indian Student Association, have they used pretty much all their money? Yes. Winter Club, most of it. Travel Association, most of it. Black Students Association, most of it thus far. They probably will be using majority of it. It's just that their year-end gala is at the end of March, beginning of April, so they haven't actually spent majority of that money yet, but it usually is used by the end of the academic year.
So I just want to know, like, on average, the clubs that we have right here highlighted, when they present their budget and they like present how many events potentially they're going to be doing, on average, how many do they actually do? Like, do we have like a percentage of that?
I don't have a percentage. It really varies year over year depending on who the executives are and how determined they are to run events. Again, I can't really give you an accurate number. Typically, we find that the events that at least funding is approved for by either Jamie or the club's advisory committee, those usually run. But in regards to all of the ones that they present about, I can't really tell you that, because plans also change. Like they'll come to us in September wanting to do 50+ events, and then midterm start, it's assignments start, like all these different things, and then they really only do, let's say, 20. So it's hard for us to say.
I'd just like to ask a follow-up. Do you guys, like, if there's no estimate, that's fine, but do you guys personally think that these clubs are actually like not any in specific, but clubs in general are actually meeting or meeting what they have been told while they're presenting for funding in the first place?
So I didn't hear the last bit of it. What did you say?
Like, do you guys personally feel like like all clubs in general are meeting what they initially think that they would want to do, like in terms of funding? Like, do they actually meet that? Like, just from a personal.
So the events they tell us they're going to run, do they actually
yeah.
run them?
Yeah.
Typically, yes. Sometimes the events do pivot, so they do email Jamie to receive written confirmation to reallocate club funding. But typically the ones that they tell us about, they typically run. But again, I can't tell you concrete because I've seen clubs, let's say last year, that were very, very active. And then this year it's a ghost town. Like it really depends on the executives and the club members.
Are there any other questions for Chloe or Jamie? Okay, thank you so much for coming and
Thank you.
presenting. We appreciate it.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
Obviously understand that those major clubs that were listed are very integral to Brock and they provide a great student experience. I also would like to argue that every single club, so every 141 clubs that we do have are integral to Brock, and they are all very important to that club member and those club executives. And while I understand that a few clubs shouldn't be penalized, I really think that in order to grow the clubs and make it better and for everyone to feel included and accepted, I think the funding cap is the way to go. Again, Jamie and I are very open to suggestions, or if you have any other comments, we're more than happy to listen to them. I just think something has to be done because, as you see, we keep running out of funding in November. If you do have suggestions, for example, I know you folks mentioned like tiered funding or based on membership. In concept, that sounds great, but if you could possibly actually give us tangible, like strategic ideas, like for example, like the membership has to be tracked like per event, and then that's what we base it off of for the funding. Like those are the kind of things that would really help Jamie and I, because just having a concept is really hard for us to follow and then to put into practice. So I just would really appreciate your folks' input. And just really appreciate your time listening to Jamie and I. So thank you.
Yeah, actually, sorry, we have one more question.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, but I just wanted to know, like for clubs in general, when they're presenting for their funding, there is a minimum amount that if they are asking for that much amount, they don't have to present and it automatically gets to them. What's that amount? Is it 300, 500?
It's if it's less than $3,000, Jamie reviews it and approves it, depending on whatever amount he decides. If it's more than $3,000, that's when they go to present in front of the club's advisory committee.
Thank you so much.
Oh, there's a question, Anusha just indicated, someone has a question, who is it? Anusha, sorry. Oh, Mohiz, okay.
So in the chat, it says, on average, how much funding do you believe new clubs require to create a fulfilling club experience? Are we meeting that baseline for club funding?
I kind of answered that question, but typically we find the new clubs ask for roughly around $1,000. It's just typically to throw maybe one or two events, just to kind of get their feet wet and see what works and what doesn't work. Hey, Jamie?
Yeah, it really depends on certain clubs. This year we have had a few clubs who grew like significantly since they ratified in October, and they wish to get more funding than what they applied for in the beginning. So we can't really say like depending on like which club is gonna need more funding essentially, or which new club. So it really depending on case by case and how passionate that executive team is and how eager are they to grow their club.
I think the Swift Society is a really good example. They brand new club last academic year, so 2023 to 2024. They obviously started with 10 club members, 3 of those being executives. By the end of September, they had grown their membership to 300 people. So again, it's case by case basis, but like that club really grew over the summer and throughout September.
I had just one more question. Is the Brock Travel Association like a new club or is it a previous club?
They're new for this academic year.
Okay, actually, I have a follow-up on that. What does the Brock Travel Club do? Do you have like a quick brief, like synopsis of what they do?
Yeah, essentially it's just a bunch of folks getting together talking about how much they love travel, and then they like to go travel to places and experience that together. So one of those examples is they want to go to the Butterfly Conservatory. So a group of them are going to go and check out the Butterfly Conservatory and then come back.
Thank you. All right, I believe that is all of our questions now.
Perfect.
You.
Thanks, Chloe. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, thank you.
All right, so now we can discuss the motion. So the motion that we have is be it resolved, board approves changes to the club's funding policy as presented. So we can move into discussion or we can just vote on it right away. Does anyone have any concerns? Yep.
I just wanted to bring a point of like discussion. I know, like the Model UN Club, it only benefits 30 people. There's also something called Brock Medical Brigades, where you go to countries like Greece, and that is completely funded by the student. So the entire trip, for example, like next year, like even I want to be a part of that, like go to Greece and like help out, like be in medical camps. So you can run stands, you can run Boston Pizza fundraisers, and every volunteer is responsible for their own funding, which is around like $2,500 to $3,000. That includes stay, flights. So just because it's like how Chloe mentioned, it's just 30 people and it's not like it doesn't impact a huge group. They also, like for example, the medical brigades also represent Brock, like in the sense like different universities come together and have camps in like risk high neighborhoods, like high risk neighborhoods. So just like I think like the 5,000 is good and the rest could be like fundraised by individuals.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. Ian, and then we'll go, I'm sorry, Thomas, and then we'll go Ian.
Yeah, so I know just speaking to like MUN members myself, they do pay a decent portion of the New York trip. It is partially subsidized by BUSU, that's for sure. I think they got around the ballpark of 18K, if I remember, subsidization, but that's still left around, I think, $7,000, which the 30 people had to split together. It's also just, and I'm not saying this in like a here towards like any other club, it's just to say that like I don't think we should penalize club success. I think if anything, we should celebrate club success. I think a successful, long-standing club that's known, basically makes Brock renowned across Canada, across the community, is incredibly important. And that's not to say I'm against putting restrictions or maybe some form of cap on funding. It's just in my personal opinion, I just don't think the $5,000 is very flexible. I think it should be taken on a more case-by-case basis, on a more proportional basis, in a way that can still meet financial needs of BUSU and financial needs of Brock, but respect the fact that these larger clubs have been largely successful and do bring in a big part to the student experience. It's not to disparage or get angry towards these new clubs or not allow them a chance to grow. That's not to do that. It's just to say that if these clubs have had a proven track record, they should not necessarily be penalized for doing that. And we should still support new clubs and up and coming clubs. But some of these bigger clubs that have been running for longer probably do, in my opinion, deserve just a little bit more support than other clubs.
I agree with both of your, like, I understand giving giving a decent amount to the clubs that are actually doing, like impacting students. And like, I also understand giving a cap, but I think 24,000 is a lot per club, like over that, just that one club.
that's a lot of that money, or like, let's say travels, I don't know, travel association. For being a new club, that 9,000 is a lot of money compared to, I think Winter Club was also on there, which has been around for 2-3 years, if I can remember. And they got less funding than Travel Association, but then from what I've seen, just look at their Instagrams, Winter Club has been more engaging or like attracting more students than Travel Association. It's just taking that into consideration. I think there should be a cap of some sort.
First thing I'm gonna say, like, I'm kind of disappointed looking at that chart, especially from the Indian Students Association, because they got like 14,500 some odd number of funding. Being an Indian myself too, I go to some of their events as well, but I've, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they do any event except the Diwali. And exactly, and their Instagram is really dry. Maybe they come to the presentation with the funding and they like ask for maybe like 14,000 and they say they're gonna do like 14 different kinds of events. They probably end up doing one, and that is very disappointing firstly. I would say that I don't totally agree with the 5,000 cap. So I kind of do agree with Thomas in this case, but at the same time, I do agree with a cap. And what I mean by that is I have like a small idea, which would be that we talked about how many events they do as per they promise. And what we can do in this case is we can have a cap of maybe, let's say, 5,400, which is adding the total amount of numbers which we have from the PDF that we're given. And we can have that as a cap, but we can allow clubs to have higher allowance for presentation only if they do more than 60% of the events in the previous year. Because that shows their promise to doing events in the upcoming years as well. And it gives them an opportunity, given the kind of size of the club they are, they can probably they then have earned the right to ask for that much money as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then you have a club like Model UN where their only really event is going to New York. Like they meet obviously throughout the year, they'll have their fundraiser, but their event that they're asking funding for is one event. So then it doesn't necessarily work for every single club that's asking for funding. So I get what you're saying, but there's going to be clubs where they just have 1 or 2 big events that they're asking funding for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but yeah.
It's hard. I think that's what
Yeah.
Chloe was trying to say. Like, it's really hard to put like a rule in place because everything looks so different. You know what I mean? So that's why they were trying to generalize it.
I think just building off of your point, like I have no problem with applying a cap. I think that cap right now, as it currently stands, is just not flexible enough, and it just doesn't work with a lot of the club experiences. I feel like creating, again, kind of a proportional thing, or I like Ian's system where you can set the cap decently low. You could even have a $5,000 cap for these bigger clubs, but just with the additional allowance for additional funding for these certain events that bring in a lot of renown to Brock. I'm not like against what they're fighting for. I absolutely am for the club equality. I'm for, clubs having great access to the student life and being able to thrive here at Brock. It's just to say that I don't think the $5,000 as it's currently written is strong enough support for various clubs. And I think that we should focus more on a case-by-case basis and more on kind of what the actual quality the clubs are bringing, if they're actually holding their events, if they have responsive executives, and we should reward that kind of good behavior. We should reward kind of, cutting costs, and we should reward people that fundraise, I think equitably. And I don't think that just saying a $5,000 blanket statement cap is necessarily going to do that. However, I do agree with Irene that there does need to be some limitations.
So what you're saying is that you're looking to increase the cap that Chloe has suggested.
I'm looking to be more on a case by case basis, primarily probably because of proportional representation. So that could be depending on how many current club members there are. We could also make rules for new clubs so that they can only ask for so much funding. I'm just saying that as the policy, as it's written currently is, unless I'm like hearing it wrong, it's just listed as $5,000, and I think that that's just too tight of an interpretation, and there just needs to be more flexibility in that interpretation for not just larger clubs like the ones that are requesting over $10,000, but also more standards in place for new clubs and smaller clubs so that they're not taking more than I'd say their fair share within club funding. And that's not to say that I don't think everybody should be given a fair share, especially these larger clubs, you know, maybe they should be perhaps forced to pay a little bit more money. It's just to say that I just don't currently, I'm not in love with the $5,000 cap. That's on the life insurance.
I think I agree with Thomas on that it should be a little bit more flexible, but along with what was said before, like we were saying, if you go based off precedent for each club, like how much events they did from the previous year, you said that like some clubs only have one event. Maybe we can set like a good criteria for like, because it is case by case, every presentation you get, every club you have, it is case by case. Maybe we can, I don't have any right now, but maybe brainstorm like if you have like a minimal amount of events, this could be the funding that makes sense for your club.
Any thoughts?
In terms of building, ultimately what the board has to do, whether it's today or whether it's in a future board meeting, because it doesn't have to get decided today. It's been a good discussion so far. But whether you create whatever policy you create, Chloe and Jamie need to interpret. So if it's very open-ended, then they have to try to interpret it. It's very difficult for them, right? So if what you do is you create something that's simple. So let's say it is with new clubs, and you say new clubs can't get more than $1,000, then that's easy for them to interpret. If you indicate that, for example, the club is, for example, has to have a lot of members, well, Model UN doesn't. If you say that the club has to run a lot of events, the ISA doesn't. So if we're looking at just the 5 on the table right now, it's an interesting dynamic because creating a policy that actually deals with all of them is a bit challenging because they're all a little bit different, right? So what I'm trying to impart on you is that whatever we pass, the club's team has to interpret. And if we make it simple for them to interpret, they'll do a great job. If what we do is we make it very open-ended, then they're going to struggle with that. So that's just my point for that.
Yeah. I'm actually in agreement with this policy. I think it'd be good to try it out. And like they said, if it's not going well for 2 or 3 years, you can always look at reevaluating it. The next board might decide that clubs need more money. So it might just get reevaluated at that point. I don't know, like we've talked a lot about like being flexible for certain clubs, and I do understand, like there are some clubs that do a little more than other clubs. But then we're looking at being flexible for these 5 clubs compared to all these other clubs. And then we don't want to discredit the work that other clubs are doing. And I know that you keep saying that Model UN is representing Brock on this global scale, but that might not be important to these other clubs. They're like, well, that doesn't matter to me. This is important. This is what matters. Our events matter. So you can't really say one is more important than the other, because then that can get sticky as well. So I actually I agree with this. Like I would be in favor of this motion. But I see some other hands that are up. So
We have also Mohis.
oh, Mohis is in the chat as well. I'll let Kate go, and then people can just read what Mohis said.
I was just gonna go off of what Robert was saying in the sense that I get the concept of wanting flexibility and case by case. But I would argue that case by case is what is currently happening. Like that is actually what we're doing. Each club comes to club's advisory committee and they evaluate it case by case. So that is what's happening now. And the other reality that we have is that we are running out of money every single November. So we have to do something, either or not, or accept that we run out of funding in November, run a referendum, is the other option to increase club funding. Or try to, as Chloe said, work within what we've got by changing the parameters. So that's sort of the three options before us. And I'm like what Robert said is trying to find the criteria. We've already identified there's no common criteria between the top five. So I don't know how we do that.
We'll go Nisha and then Hinkle.
So just to add, and this is in line with what Kate and Robert are saying, but we've all had very good discussion about this, and this is something that the execs have also been talking about as to how can we actually utilize the funds that we have. Going for a club referendum as of now does not make sense looking at the current environment. And this was something that we had in our goals this year as well, that currently in the 5 clubs that we have, if I'm talking about ISA, MSA,
Accents in the situation, all the UN.
UN and travel.
let's leave out MUN and travel. They all do trips, which require more money, which we understand. 3 other clubs, they usually do events on campus, or they do events off campus with a venue. Now the venue is the biggest chunk that goes. All the other things like tablecloths, showpieces for the event, and all those things can be avoided. And that was something that we were discussing this year, was that BUSU can provide those things because those are the things that are repeated. So that's where funding does get reduced quite a bit for the other clubs as well, who do like meet and greets. If they need something that they are using repetitively, that can be seen and that can be changed with us providing that to clubs. That's also called supporting the club. So I understand there's no common ground here with these 5 clubs, but there is that little section that we can work on. So again, you don't have to make a decision today. I have been looking at the club funding request. I've been trying to find out which clubs have been asking for something that we can actually just provide, and they don't need to be buying that from outside, because external parties are expensive. We're gonna have a new building soon, so the venue aspect can really change in the next 2 years. But that's just what I wanted to put up.
Thanks. Hinkle, go ahead.
I remember. I don't know if this was a thing, but I think last year or something, we did run out in November, but didn't we have an option like you can apply for this semester to get funding and then reapply for second semester? Was that a thing or am I just?
Yeah, I feel like that was a thing when we still had funding, but for the past like 2 years since we've been running out, obviously that hasn't been an option. But in the past, like you could apply for first semester, and since there was still money in the budget, you could apply for second semester if you thought, okay, well these events were successful. We're gonna run a couple other events, and we see now that we need extra funding. So it's just an opportunity to come back and see the club's team and ask for more funding.
So if we had a cap of 5,000, let's see that happen, and then for like this first semester and see if they want to reapply, then if they've used up the 5,000, they can reapply. If not, then don't and still keep the cap. I just think if they're not using up 5,000, they should be.
I just want to say that I do completely agree with Anusha's point and what she said about having that cap and the importance of it. I'm sorry, but did you just say that, Hinka, did you just say that it's like it'd be better for clubs to use up the 5,000? Is that what you meant?
No, so I think if we do have a cap of 5,000, let's say one of the 5 clubs that get more than 10,000, they can apply for 5,000, they might get it. And then if we do have club funding left over after all the clubs have got the money, and if they've used up the 5,000, then they can reapply. We can have a second cap on reapplying. I just think if they're not using up 5,000 and they're getting 20, they should be first using up the 5 and then reapplying. So that shows us that they're actually using it instead of just asking for an absurd amount.
Yeah, what I would think with that is that a club, like let's say any club, like an ISA, maybe they ask for 5,000. by the end they realize they haven't used it up, so it's better for them to use it up. Am I just do like any random event and spend any kind of money, go blind money on it and just
Yeah, but I agree.
try to get to that 5,000?
But you can't spend money that wasn't approved. So for example, for Winter Club, if $800 was approved for buses to a trip, you can only use $800 for buses. You can't use 802. Like you can't even use $2. Like in the reconciliation form, like that would be an issue.
I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, if that's what Ian was saying. I think you were trying to say, like, if you applied for the first semester, you got 5,000, whatever it was, you used it. And then if there was still additional club funding, you go to apply second semester just because you already used
You're trying
5,000.
to just.
Then you're just trying to use money to use.
I was just clarifying the point that he was like, oh, if the clubs realize they haven't used up the funding, they would just throw it off in a big event. Like that's not possible because Jamie looks at all the forms, like monthly forms, so.
No, what I meant is not one big event, I meant like some small
Oh, I
events, just additions. That's what I was gonna say, and coming back to what I was talking about in Lucia's point. Like you mentioned that clubs like Rock Travel or Model UN, who, let's say like something like Model, I'll take Model UN as example, and if there's candidates who want to go to Model UN. Model UN does charge you $375 to go. Just saying, I was interested this year, I couldn't go, I couldn't make it. But if they're charging you $375 and if there's 30 people going, that is about 11,250, which they are raising, and they were getting about 18,000. 18,000 that they're getting, and that's separate from this 11,000, as I understand right now. And I would just say that in terms of, especially in terms of Model UN, if you ask students to pay more than this 375,000 to go, I think that's just a little unrealistic, and it's a bit unfair to the size of Model UN as a competition. I'd say that's.
Do you have anything you need to
I will
say?
be as quick as possible. I kind of want to go. What was that association we're talking about? The medical association.
Medical brigades.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like I think just as it's currently listed, I'm not in love with the policy, but like if there was more flexibility to the salary cap, then Model UN and like medical brigades could ask for money to go on these trips to do these things. That I'd be completely fine with. It's just I think the salary cap shouldn't kind of be this like end all, you're only getting this much money for this. It should be almost a baseline, and it should be the baseline that all clubs should work for. And I think that that baseline shouldn't necessarily be applied 5,000 universally for all. I think it should be proportional depending on membership or maybe something along the lines of that, or commitment to events, like Ian was saying. Like I think like we're all actually more on the same page than we get. It's just I think as it's currently listed, again, I'm sorry I've been repeating, but I just think that the $5,000, as it's currently listed and as it's currently written in the policy, is just very, very inflexible. It's not that I'm opposed to the policy cap, it's just I think that policy cap should be more affirming of additional circumstances or additional.
Is anybody here on Model UN?
I've been to like one.
Okay, because I was just wondering if anyone had information on like what they actually do to fundraise.
Yes,
Everybody know?
I do know. So they did a Krispy Kreme donut fundraiser. That's what they did. They've also done flip grids. So like it's almost like they do it for Super Bowls. Like you put like a thing down, you put like $10 on a flip grid, and if your thing gets up, you get like a prize or something. They've done like just candies. What do they call it? Candy grams.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So like they are an active club. Like I know that for certain, and it's not to say that all the other clubs aren't as active. It's just they are actively fundraising. They do like try to get as much money as they can. It's just obviously the costs to go to New York are so expensive that they have to ask for money to make it semi-reasonable.
One really quick thing I'd like to add about Model UN is that something I liked about what they were doing in terms of raising funding is that they asked their delegates who were coming week in, week out to go out there and sell those donuts to their friends, and they took the responsibility not just with the execs but also their members to raise them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mohis.
Good evening, everyone. So sorry I joined a little late. So the one point I wanted to mention, at least in terms of club funding and the discussions that I participated so far, I do agree, and I like Thomas's key word, inflexible. I think if we are setting 5,000 as a precedent, as a cap, in terms of policy implications, I think we may skew kind of student beliefs about, okay, are we receiving the amount of club funding we want? Are we receiving the experience that we want at Brock and with, BUSU? So I think a better recommendation would be what I think it was Kate reading it, which was the idea that we let the funding, um, we decide that basically in October and we would do a referendum. I think when students realize that, okay, we are trying to be flexible, we are trying to advocate for their clubs and for their financial um, needs, then that could be very, very um, rewarding, and it could be very good for Boost as an organization too. That, okay, we hear you, we are trying to be flexible, and now we're going to bring this, let's say, referendum to increase club funding across the board. So those are my 2 cents.
Thanks, Monkeys. Okay, I think we should probably move on because our next item is going to be a big chunk of the meeting and it's already 8:15. So the motion as presented is be it resolved, board approves changes to clubs, funding policy as presented. So what we all saw in the presentation. I'll just ask for a mover for this. Seconder. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and abstentions. 1, 2.
Or the
Opposed.
opposed.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I counted 2 then, sorry.
Oh, good.
Okay. So as presented, motion fails. So what can happen is we can ask Chloe and their team to revisit it. So from what I'm hearing, you guys are looking for more flexibility. So they can come back to us next month and just revise it with a little bit of what we said. So I can send a follow-up email to her, Kate or Robert can, just a little bit about what we discussed and they can represent to us. Does that work for everyone?
I have one point that's, I'm gonna ask it through the chair, because I think it's important to ask this through, is the board looking for a revised policy, or is the board looking to go to referendum? Because I've heard 2 messages here, because it would be very different. It would be very different work done by staff.
Okay, from what I understood, is we were looking for revised policy.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's move on. We have an in-camera session. So, can somebody move to moving camera? Thomas, seconded by Randa, all in favor? Awesome.
Would be getting the entire piece papered, and papered means legal documents for all of them. So that is a really big step for this building moving forward. So we will receive documents from Brock University and one document from TD, and then we'll get legal to review them. So that is a really good step forward for us. And so we believe our final process on this is there's going to either be a special meeting of the Brock University Board of Trustees or the May 1st, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting to approve this in finality. Provided we can come to legal terms, we will get this approved. The final hurdle will be we will open tender documents in July. And if those tender documents are under the budget, then we move forward. And we would start demolition this summer. So that is the update on that. Anusha, Carly, Kate, and I are working on with the university on something called the Omnibus Agreement, which governs how our 2 organizations work together in terms of Brock and BUSU. We've had 1 meeting. We've developed basically a response to Brock's requests. We will be sending that request over ideally this week. And so far, there's been no glaring crazy surprises or anything of that nature. I think most things were anticipated on our side, so we'll continue to move forward to finalize our omnibus agreement. My last two items that I'm going to present is final assignments and exams. Is as of today, we have 52 days remaining until the end of April. It's crazy, eh? Holy flies. And so on behalf of our, our office administration, we wish all of you the best of luck as you get ready for your final assignments, your exams, things of that nature. So I'm also in a situation which I'll finish off with. So I'm in a similar situation to you right now as also a student. And I'm not counting, but I have 33 days remaining to complete my thesis for a master's degree. And I handed in part 2 on Sunday. I have 2 classes remaining, and I'll hand in my part 3 of my thesis on March the 21st. And I will submit my final thesis on the 11th of April. And so I, like you, I'm grinding through to the end. So I can empathize with what you guys are going through. So that concludes my report. There was also some items circulated. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Any questions regarding any items in his report? Yeah.
It's just a comment. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you too. I saw that in your report.
Well,
so
thank
I
you.
don't know. There you go.
Oh, now we know Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. We can move on then to the president's report.
Perfect. So my report is also being distributed, and also the other 2 executives have set out their reports on the forum. So if you have any questions, let me know. But I'll go through my report and then chat about everything else. So first things first, before I left, I was honored to be part of the AVP Alumni and Development hiring committee here at Brock. So we concluded the hiring process in February. I was really happy to get a student perspective on it. We're still yet to hear a final decision, but hopefully it's going to be made soon. So once that's announced, I will be able to share it with all of you. Robert has given a broken update, so my update is only going to be about the 2 events that we had with regards to the new golden space. That was we had an Isaac's Alumni Night, which happened on March 8th. That was over the weekend. We had about 198 tickets sold on Eventbrite and about 20 walk-ins. So I think a rough number that we got was 215 alumni were in the space downstairs, so it's really nice to have all of them. We had some great conversations, a lot of memories shared about that space, and they're really excited to see the new space. So that's just an update. The upcoming student event is happening on March 27th. So I really, this is more of a request that please spread the word if you want students to come down to the space. So it's going to be a wholly new space, but we really want this to be a memorable event for all the badgers who are here currently. So if you can promote the event as much as possible, I would really appreciate it. Real kudos to the entire marketing events team, Jesse, Dana, Celine, and Brock TV as well for all of their efforts that are currently underway to make the event successful. And of course, all the executives are hands on deck for that event as well. So we hope to see you all there if possible. Omnibus agreement, probably just spoken about it, no updates on that. We had the elections for Senate, Board, and Brock Press, which was nice. Everything went well. Just wanted to thank Haley, Kate, Patty, Jesse, and the Elections and Referendum Committee for all their hard work, making sure everything went well for the campaign and the voting committee. Wonderful. In terms of events since my return, we had Painted Your Way, Legogram, Grad Brunch and Learn Karaoke Night, as well as Connections Cafe. All of them were great events. We had a good turnout for all of them. Connection Cafe was Shania's special project, kind of. It was one of her goals that she wanted to do for this year. So she led that whole project herself, with obviously support from the events manager. But all of it went really well. A lot of students made some new friends. They did a lot of activities, which was wonderful to see. We had a total of 97 students to put that number out for that event. So that was wonderful. We also had the Wellness Week, which was last week, which we had puppy social, free poutine night and unwind Wednesday. For puppy social, we had 300 students in attendance, which was great to see, which only tells you that students are stressed out. And we had free poutine night. We had about 345 students show up for that event, so that was a great number as well. And also, we know how many students are hungry. And Unwind Wednesday was also wonderful. It was about 7-hour event, which was great. We had a lot of students come out and play some games, do some recreational activities. So yeah. And Trivia Tuesdays, as last semester, they were great, busy, and packed. So it's really nice to see Isaac's really packed Tuesdays. Another upcoming event is Pizza with Politicians. This is happening on March 13th. This is in more detail in Mark's report. If you have any questions about that, we can help you out. All politicians have been confirmed for the event. It's again part of Mark's special project. It was done last year and we're going to continue it this year. We had a great turnout last year, so we're hoping for a good turnout this year as well. Again, huge thank you to Janaya, Celine, Jesse, Dana, for all their support to make this event successful, or hopefully be very successful actually. All logistics are set and we're just happy to have all the politicians on campus. And again, please spread the word among the poli-sci department. This is a great opportunity for students to come down and actually speak to politicians, ask questions. Yeah, I've put the link in the report, so if you'd like to reserve a spot, please go ahead and RSVP. Rest of the order here, but I'll go first for food first update. I think 2 reports ago, I had said that we had a conversation with Brad Clark. We dispersed the group from a very large group to a very small group. So it's being Carly, who's more or less heading the conversation, which has been very helpful. So Carly has been working with the GSA president, the GSA executive director, and Juan, of course, from our team. And their kind of communication is happening, things are moving in the right direction. So I'll probably have an update, a final update with changes in April, in the April board meeting. And we want to move with those changes next year. So that's our aim, April. So that's something that I want to let you all know. We also were invited to the Brock Masjid opening that happened last week, I believe. It was great to be part of such a beautiful opening ceremony. It's really nice to have this addition on campus. And I'm really excited for the Muslim community to have that space to pray as well. Want to know where it's located? It's located in Thistle Complex across the Market Hall. Want to see the space? Feel free to go and see it as well. Next one is, sorry, this one longer than I thought. Student access self-declaration form. I believe I shared this update last time as well. The only request here is please spread the word for this form and the changes that have been made, because students don't usually know and they probably don't even notice. So I'm also working with Jesse to have something out on our Instagram page with an FAQ section, so that if students have a question, it'll be up. So that should be up soon, so you all can share that. That would be very helpful. I have the cycle pre-meeting for the Board of Trustees and the CIC meeting, the Capital Infrastructure Committee. All went well, like Robert said. It did go as an information item this time. And again, we're hoping to have a final approval meeting either in cycle 1 or if there's a special meeting for that as well. We had politicians tabling, as you all know, elections just ended for Ontario on February 27th. But prior to that, we had about 8 candidates who participated at a tabling event at Union Station. We didn't have a very good student turnout, probably 1 or 2 students, which was not the best, but it was still a valuable opportunity for them to come down and talk to students. Still one. The next one is the USA Spring GA 2025 just ended yesterday. Mark and Carly headed to Waterloo this time with 7 delegates. Everything went well. And Mark, it was an important time for Mark because Mark contributed to the tech-enabled learning policy paper. And there were 2 papers, tech-enabled learning policy paper and comprehensive access strategy paper. Both of them were approved, so that was good. And BUSU will be doing the additional work of getting it to the provincial government. Lastly, the transition feels really sad to say that I'm gonna be leaving this position soon. But there's a lot of work of getting the transition plan. Hopefully, if everything goes well with hiring and everything happens in a planned way, we will have about 9 to 10 days with the new executives to be able to transition them. So we have been reaching out to people, fixing meetings as to who we would like for them to meet and get to know. So that's happening, and we're trying to give as very smooth transition as possible. But yeah, question about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anusha. Question, Harley?
Thank you for the presentation. Is there a list of which politicians will be in the event?
Yes, the link that I just added in my report has a list of all the petitions.
So students can go there to do some research
Yes,
and ask some burning questions for them.
we have the buyers. I think the buyers are already up actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
What's the current update on like the Food First program?
So
What are the discussions on?
the discussions are, so we reached out to Brock because we had some few concerns of how the Food First program was being placed by them and then by us as well and the GSA. So BUSU and GSA, they worked together on the Food First program. But there were a few concerns of how things were happening from the Brock end. So we've got some answers which are good, and we're open to change as well. Of maybe changing a few things with not using our name or some of those items as well. So that's where the conversation is headed, and that's what we were hoping to do, was to be able to differentiate the two programs, but obviously the main aim is always to be there for the students and feed the students. That's always been the aim for both the programs, but they're just going to be using a different name for the program. So that's a very preliminary update that I can give you as of now. But I'm going to have a detailed report about that in the next meeting, so we can talk about it then. That's good.
Any other questions for Anusha or any other executive reports? Oh, I have a quick question about the wellness week. Do we do the free massages this year or no? We didn't do it this year? Okay. All right. I was just
I
wondering.
don't know when.
I don't know.
Let's say 2 years ago.
2 years? Okay. I have like a vivid memory. Getting the massage. Yeah. Is that something that we could look into, like even like before exams for students?
Talk to the students about it.
We'll talk to them about that.
Supporting Niagara College students, it's great.
No, collaboration.
Cool. All right, seeing no more questions or comments. Thank you both for presenting your reports. We can adjourn. It's 8:50. This is really shocking, guys. I think it's our first time that we've made it before 9 o'clock. So yeah. Who would like to motion to adjourn? Thomas, all in favor? Awesome. Meeting adjourned. Feel free to grab some Timbits if you want to take a coffee home with you. Go for it.
40 would be great.
You win?
No, please play again.
I don't know.
Oh, you're right.